Good morning, participants. And today we have with us Dr. Yus Chandrasekhar, sir. Okay, so first let me introduce him. Good morning, sir.
Good
Chandrasekhar,
morning.
sir.
Good morning.
Good morning. So Dr. U. Chandrasekhar is Program Director at Advise Wipro 3D Bangalore. He is a researcher, administrator, and keen practitioner of 3D printing. He has been he is having more than 35 years of experience in mechanical analysis, experimental stress analysis, and 3D printing. He has led ESCI Hyderabad as the director and Weltech University as pro vice chancellor prior to the current job at Wipro 3D. He has received his graduation from NIT Suratgarh, PG degree from IIT Madras in mechanical engineering. He has received his PhD from VTU for his research work in additive manufacturing of photopolymer carried out at DRDO. He has advanced diploma in management. His research area of research include mechanical analysis of aero gas turbine engine modules, additive manufacturing, micro aerial vehicles, and sensor for harsh environment. He received a gold medal from the former President of India, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, for his academic achievements. After serving at the Ministry of Defense in several capacities, he rose to the position of Additional Director at DRDO in 2010. He has set up the country's first ever 3D printing laboratory at GTRE Bangalore in 1997. In his tenure at DRDO, he has carried out several technological development projects and also led a senior group of scientists at Moscow during the testing phase of development of aero gas turbine engines. He received commendation medal from scientific advisor to the defense minister in recognition to his contribution to rapid prototyping of complex aeronautical systems. He has been invited as keynote speaker by several international and national forums. He served as the editorial board of International Scientific Journal. He is also in various subcommittees and committees of academic boards like NBA, etc., for fostering outcome-based education in the country. I request Dr. UC Chandrasekhar sir to kindly start today's lecture. Sir.
Okay. Good morning, Dr. Yogesh, and thank you for your kind introduction. Is my voice clearly coming through?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So whenever the voice is trailing off, please do call me. So I'll get to know about it. Okay. Is my screen visible? The first screen?
Yes.
The screen is visible, is it? The slide one?
Yes. You may try changing slides so that we are sure before starting.
Yeah.
Second slide.
Is it changing?
Yes. Yes, it's changing. It is perfect. Okay. Please start.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Indeed, it's my pleasure to be part of this particular webinar with thematic focus on 3D printing and design. And Dr. Yogesh, it's really a great pleasure to know that the webinar is going to focus concurrently on the topics of 3D printing and design, because to really derive the value from 3D printing, one needs to be riveted to the possibilities through rethinking or reimagining of the designs. In the first slide, you can see some of the parts we have re-engineered and we have realized through additive manufacturing or 3D printing in the recent years. The one which you see on the top is a combustor casing for an unmanned aerial vehicle system. What you see in the center is a nozzle guide vane for an aircraft gas turbine engine made out of nickel alloy. And what you see in the bottom is a 3D printed feed cluster, which is part of GSAT-19 communication satellite developed by Wipro 3D in 2017 for ISRO. So we are seeing more and more applications of 3D printing in multi-varied sectors in different contexts, right from concept development to prototyping to tooling to series production to batch production, and also to the repair and refurbishment of used parts. So today 3D printing synonymously represents various stages of the product development. Dr. Yogesh, I just want to tell you, ask you one
Yes.
thing. Is the question and answer session scheduled at the end of the presentation?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. It can be
Yeah.
done.
Yeah. So maybe I'll conclude my talk by about 11:15, and we can have question and answer session following by that. Is it okay?
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. It is fine.
Okay. So now I have put my contact credentials, u.chandrasekhar@wipro.com, and it's a possibility that some of the questions I'll be able to take on during the session. But if I'm not able to answer the questions because of the paucity of time, you can always contact me at a later time on this mail, and I'll be very happy to contribute in any which way I can. Moving on, I would spend next about 1 hour, 30 minutes on capturing the paradigm shift in metal additive manufacturing in the context of industrial as well as strategic sectors. A part of my presentation will also focus on the new materials for additive manufacturing and the process chain, and I'll discuss the applications, as I mentioned, corresponding to various stages of the product development. Spend some time in understanding how do you test this metal additive manufactured parts, how do you prove them, how do you get the qualification for their eventual absorption into the working systems. I would like to spend some time on that. And since most of you are from the academic institutions, I just want to delineate the opportunities for research and development projects in 3D printing. I think some of you might have noticed that the bodies like Department of Science and Technology, AICTE, DRDO, ISRO have been actively promoting the culture of additive manufacturing or various devices, and they are also supporting the research proposals of many faculty members through various schemes. So I want to spend few minutes discussing that. And finally, I would like to conclude my talk by describing what is the way forward for this exciting technology in the years to come. So typically, if you want to categorize the technologies of additive manufacturing, you can categorize into two lots. The ones wherein the primary material happens to be thermoplastic material or photopolymer resin, and the other technologies wherein you are focusing on metallic materials. So my talk today will mostly focus on powder bed fusion technology and to some extent the directed energy deposition technology. And I'm sure in the first 2 days of this seminar, you have also got exposure to the basic functionalities of these processes. So I would not spend too much time in recapping those aspects. But what is important to know that the one which are very commonly used, like fused deposition modeling, it's also called as extrusion technology. In the recent times, even the FDM technology or extrusion technology has been adapted towards metals. So, how exactly this particular adaptation has happened, I would like to give few examples in connecting the FDM technology with the metallic materials. So, if you look at what's happening within India in the world of 3D printing, it's quite amazing. The field has been growing at an impressive rate of almost 20%. It is called compounded annual growth rate, has been excess of 20%. And you look at this enterprises wherein the metal 3D printers are operating. Could be automotive companies like Tata Motors or Bajaj, TVS, Turbo Energy. Could be research and development organizations. Practically all the aerospace organizations working in DRDO, HAL, ISRO, LPSC, VSSC, Trivandrum, they have started integrating 3D printing into the culture of their product development. And the tool rooms, there are plethora of tool rooms in the country, small tool rooms, large size tool rooms, including CMTI, NTTF, etc., which have started using this technology vigorously in developing the tools with the conformal cooling channels, injection molding tools. And in the recent times, we have also seen that there is a significant use of the 3D printing in medical fields, maybe with reference to developing the devices or developing the patient-specific implants, or sometimes even for rehearsal of complex surgeries prior to the clinical situations. And the usage of this technology in academia has also been on the uprise. Many NITs and IITs have set up their own captive centers in 3D printing, both in metals and plastics. And the number of MTech projects, PhD projects, in many cases, even BTech projects that have got thematic focus on 3D printing is on the rise. And one more reason why this technology is becoming increasingly popular among the academic institutions is because of the fact that the startup companies, the companies which are into the innovative developmental efforts connected with new products, including wearable devices, avionics parts, aeronautical modules, automotive components, have been very actively pursuing this technology for accelerating their product development efforts. This slide gives a glimpse of our solutions, which we solved through 3D printing or additive engineering approach uh, from different materials. You can see the first one is a propulsion nozzle disc. The material which has been used in this case is a nickel-based superalloy called Inconel 718. The sensor housing, which we did for an electronic company, is made out of stainless steel, SS316L. You can see here extremely complex integrated helix antenna made for an aerospace company using an aluminum alloy called ALS810MG. And then you can also see some manifolds, exhaust struts, the monolithic antenna parts, the ones which operate at extremely high temperatures, the nozzle tips, which are made from specialized material called HX alloy, a nickel-based superalloy, using 3D printing. All these things we did in the recent years between 2015 to 2020 for several Indian companies as well as global companies right here in Bangalore. So it's not that I'm only talking about major companies of the size of ISRO, DRDO, even the startups. About in August second week, there was an announcement by a Hyderabad-based startup called Skyroot, which developed this bipropellant liquid rocket engine injector, the one which you see here. This was made out of ALS-I10MG, and what is that used for? It's for the rocket engines, and fundamentally this particular Vikram series of launch vehicles which are being developed by this company called Skyroot has approached Wipro 3D for developing this product, and it's a small company based out of Hyderabad, and we are seeing more and more instances wherein the specialized products of this kind can be developed using 3D printing with phenomenal reduction in the time frame as well as the number of parts. So if you look at the genesis of 3D printing, I have been using this technology for about now 25 years. I'm showing some part which I have done in 2005. This is actually accessory drive gearbox housing, which I developed for the combat aircraft application. I think some of you would be knowing Tejas aircraft, and the linear dimension of this is about 780 mm, and the other dimension is about 500 mm or less than 500 mm. The actual part is made out of magnesium alloy, and in some cases aluminum alloy. by agencies like GTRE, DRDO, HAL Koraput, and DMRL Hyderabad. So the developmental time for actually the original part is anywhere between 12 to 16 months, because the process is investment casting, and tremendous amount of time is required for casting the part and processing the part. In this case, we developed a 1:1 replica, and when it was distributed to the user groups, quickly the foundry technician was able to find out that in some zones, the bosses are so close to each other that the material will not be able to flow. So the part was re-engineered, and what you know as the DFM, designed for manufacturing, was done using 3D printing as a reference. So this is one classic case where the availability of an accurate replica right in the beginning of the product development helps the efforts of the enterprises in redoing or reimagining the designs. This is one more application which I did way back in 2001. I think the product in this case is an ornithopter. Ornithopter is nothing but a mechanical bird uh, through flapping of wings. So these wings move up and down. These are the structures on which wings are mounted. Fundamentally, if you see, the rotary motion of the motor is being converted into the flapping motion of the wings. So this entire transmission mechanism weighs less than 4 milligrams. So we created the small miniature assembly using 3D printing technology, those days stereolithography, and we were able to directly put it into ornithopter and fly it successfully. So if you see, in this case, the 3D printed parts were able to meet the operational demands because the loads which are coming on these parts are very less, and the stresses, consequential stresses, are not so significant. If you look at the tensile strength of ABS material, it's about 35 megapascal. So as long as the operational stress is less than 35 megapascal, you can confidently go ahead and replace the injection molded part with the FDM part. But if you move to the complex application where the loads are much larger and stresses are larger, you can't make use of the plastic 3D printed part. See, this is one more example which I want to quote. Recently at Wipro 3D, we developed this emergency breathing apparatus. Um, you call it as mechanical ventilator also. And while developing this part, many parts were developed using 3D printing because of the fact that they were only connected with the prototyping. But if you want to really go into the production phase, the direct plastic parts from 3D printing will not be relevant. So in recent years, we have seen that there is a consistent shift of the usage of 3D printing in several contexts through metallic materials. So what you see on the left side is an automotive component called upright. It is called the steering upright or knuckle. This one. And what you see on the right side is a feed cluster for a communication satellite. So these components have directly gone from a 3D printing system into the functional modules. And if you look at the practice of these technologies, it's no longer manufacturing. It is becoming an interplay of design, advanced materials, laser physics, polymer chemistry, simulation, post-processing technologies like abrasive flow machining, EDM, severe mechanical uh, attrition, short peening, then quality control practices connected with proving out and certification. So the technology of 3D printing or additive manufacturing is no longer associated with only mechanical engineering and manufacturing. It's actually is becoming a point of convergence for multidisciplinary approach from both engineering and science. And you'll be surprised to know that there are so many simulation tools which are being used within additive manufacturing now to predict the residual stresses, to find out the incidences of porosities, and to develop the scan strategies for the laser beams in such a manner that you can get the parts with an adequate strength and structural integrity. So the point which I want to re-emphasize in this slide is between 2001 to 2020, if you see, there is a significant movement in terms of inducting this technology towards practical uses. And like what I have shown in this case is the famous launch of the Elon Musk owned company SpaceX, which is interested in developing the rocket engines using 3D printed materials of cobalt chrome base. So, and if you see these applications, you can quickly infer that the current application profile of 3D printing systems is more towards meeting the functional needs, end use needs. In case you have got only access to plastic 3D printing, and if you are interested in metallic parts, in the olden days, the companies like Bajaj, TVS, Tata Motors, and many foundries, what were they doing? They were making these plastic parts as a master patterns, as you can see in this case, which was done in Coimbatore in 2005. And using this 3D printed ABS master pattern, one was able to do the casting using sand casting for an automotive housing. So this is an indirect method. It's also called as rapid tooling, or you can also use it as a bridge tooling. But fundamentally, you are not able to get the parts with the necessary strength from 3D printing. That's why you were resorting to these indirect methodologies for applications. Now, in recent times, what happened is, since we are able to connect with engineering materials like steels, aluminum alloys, nickel alloys, cobalt, chrome, the organizations have taken advantage of this possibility and started making parts from 3D printing for direct use. So in this case, you can see a feed cluster made out of aluminum, silicon, magnesium alloy of the dimensions of 800 mm by 380 by 350, made by Wipro for ISRO for the satellite application. It all started in the year 2017. You can see here this particular module, which is displayed on the top right. It's a feed cluster. In this case, what we did is we converted 17 parts into single part, and that process is called monolithizing. So if you look at this design, imagine that you are doing this part in a conventional scenario, and if you want to make this individually horns and join them together, there is a tremendous amount of welding or fasteners involved. But by making all the 17 parts into single part, we were able to A, cut down the number of parts, B, realize weight reduction, and importantly, the RF performance tremendously improved because of the absence of these fasteners and weldments. So now it has been in the space, orbiting along with the GSAT 19 for nearly 3 years. And when it is working in the space, it is subjected to tremendous amount of thermal loads, starting from minus 40 degrees centigrade to 150 degrees centigrade, depending upon the solar flares. It's subjected to environmental challenges. It's subjected to vibrational loads, mechanical loads. So when you look at the developing phase of this particular part, we not only check the part for its tensile strength, hardness, microstructure, porosity, residual stress, flexural strength. We also check this additive 3D printed part for other phenomena like transmission coefficient, reflection coefficient, insertion loss, return loss, voltage standard wave ratio, radiation pattern, etc. So I would like to re-emphasize that the 3D printed parts, if they have to fulfill more and more complex applications, you need to make sure that enough provision is made for verifying these parts and proving out these parts for operation conditions and operation loads to which the systems will be subjected to. So if you look at the journey of many companies, typically they don't start off with extremely complex components initially. They start off with category zero components like bolts, levers, and bosses. What do you mean by category zero components is even if you were to make 3D printed parts and imagine that due to certain defect it fails, since it is not in the primary load path, the whole structure will not face any catastrophe. So the entire effort is in terms of proving out the technology using this category zero components, and after gaining confidence, slowly you start moving at the parts with higher criticality. So for example, the category 4 will consist of components like nozzle guide vanes, honeycomb structures, turbine blades, etc. And they are subjected to high temperatures, high pressures, extremely corrosive environments, and as long as you're able to prove out all these performance parameters, it's fine, and then you can move on. Currently, what's happening is the new category is emerging. It is called reimagining the designs for additive manufacturing, because as a designer, you know the advantages that are offered by additive manufacturing through the product development. So maybe you would like to relook at the components and re-engineer them. And this is called design for additive manufacturing or additive design. This is what many companies are interested in now. The entire business associated with additive manufacturing in the year 2020 is estimated to be about 11 billion US dollars. About 35% of the same is due to metal additive manufacturing. Remaining is because of the polymer additive manufacturing. The business may be because of the materials, systems, services, and spare parts or research. So you can see here within the world of manufacturing, additive manufacturing definitely is emerging as an important activity. So I picked this up from the news item of June 20, wherein BMW, one of the most famous automotive companies in the world, synonymous with high quality aeronautical systems, made an announcement that they are opened up an additive manufacturing campus in Germany uh, to serve the development of spare parts for their business and to do the batch production of some of the important parts. And if you look at this facility, it has got nearly 51 systems, a few connected with metallic materials, a few connected with composites, a few connected with polymer materials. And this kind of a scenario is going to be seen in the future fairly frequently because of the fact that the companies have understood the advantage of integrating additive manufacturing into their ecosystem. And in the recently experienced situations wherein the pandemic has affected the supply chains, the companies have realized that if you are able to integrate additive manufacturing into the supply chain, even if the regular supply chain is affected, they can get the parts done using additive manufacturing and be available just in time and deliver the part at the need of the hour. So, if you see, this is a very well-known picture in the world of additive manufacturing. Um, uh, See, initially, when the technology started in the year 1990, there was an innovation trigger. Lots of new processes came in, like FDM, uh, stereolithography, then selective laser sintering. So there was a peaking of expectations. Many people felt that uh, with these technologies, all the companies will be looking forward to setting up massive facilities using additive manufacturing and conventional manufacturing is no longer relevant. But afterwards, they understood the kind of limitations that you are likely to encounter in 3D printing. So there was a trough of disillusionment, and the interest died down. But from the year 2000, we have seen that there is a slope of enlightenment. The companies have understood how exactly you can adapt the new material, how do you develop new devices and products, how can you take up mass customization and mass personalization using special purpose 3D printing systems and softwares. And one important thing is the 3D scanners are being used in tandem with 3D printers, and developing products like hearing devices, orthodontic aligners for mass consumption. I think there were a couple of case studies, business cases of Nike, wherein they developed customized insoles using 3D printing and delivered nearly 500,000 pairs of shoes using 3D printing with a technology called digital light synthesis. And it was a major success story in the world of consumer goods using 3D printing. See, what are the metallic materials which are available in 3D printing? You can spend some time in absorbing the information from the slide. So you have nickel-based superalloys, you have got aluminum alloys. Aluminum alloys are especially useful when you want adequate strength at low weight. You have got the whole range of stainless steels. SS174, 155, 316L is one of the favorites for additive manufacturing. Tool steels. Then the copper alloys have become very popular in case of 3D printing because of the fact that the conventional aeronautical engines are giving away to the electrical vehicles, and the copper and copper alloys are extremely useful when you are developing the heat exchangers and the housings for electrical batteries. And what you see here on the right hand, the titanium is a favorite both for aerospace sector as well as the medical sector because of their biocompatibility. So this particular slide is an indication of the kind of materials which are currently available in the world of 3D printing when you're talking about powder bed fusion or DED. You're also getting new materials, but what is shown in this case is a scandium reinforced aluminum magnesium alloy called scalm alloy. If you look at the density of this material, it's just about 2.6. But if you look at the specific strength of this material, that is strength to weight ratio, it's very high. How much is the specific strength? It's about 184. What is the specific strength of aluminum? It's only 129. So for a given weight, the strength which is being provided by this newly engineered additive manufacturing material is significantly better. So many new companies which are interested in looking at titanium materials, instead of going for titanium, they are also content in terms of using scalm alloy. So this is one advantage of re-engineering the materials for additive manufacturing. If you look at the metal AI technologies as per the classification of NASA, there are powder bed fusion technologies. I'm going to concentrate on two technologies here: selective laser melting or powder bed fusion using lasers and electron beam melting. The other technologies which are very important in the world of repair and refurbishment of worn out parts is the direct energy deposition technique. And the technology which is in the lab now, we are not seeing many commercial systems, but they are all at different stages of TRE levels: ultrasonic additive, friction stir additive, and cold spray technologies. They are slowly getting developed, and the material in this case can come in the form of foils or powders. And if you further want to classify the metal additive manufacturing systems, you can see the material can come in the form of wire or powder or a pellet or a filament or dispersion or rod or sheet. So the other method of creating the subdivision is based on the method of fusion, melting or binding. As far as the energy for fusion is concerned, it could come either from electron beam or a laser. And the feedstock can be placed either in bed or deposition. And the environment in some cases could be vacuum, in other cases could be inert gas or the regular atmosphere itself. So if you look at the typical EM solutions, for aerospace and defense, it could be the gas turbine engine parts or aircraft parts, avionics parts, or drones, or MRO and replacement parts, or the waveguides or feed cluster, and marine gas turbine engines, wherein the corrosion resistance is extremely important for meeting the needs of long-term applications in naval systems. Now, there comes the question, how small or how big can additive manufactured parts? Just give me a second. Uh, Typically, the commercial systems are available within a build envelope of 10 inches by 10 inch, that is 250 by 250 by 250. But there are many instances where large modules, even up to 2-meter diameter, realized for rocket engine applications by NASA and SWRE for projects like RS-25, RD-180, using direct energy deposition techniques. See, this is a very symbolic representation in terms of progression in the usage of technologies. Originally, these technologies were made use for making the parts. After some time, they moved to subsystems. Now, you can make the complete system itself using 3D printing. So what you see on the right hand bottom is a completely a gas turbine engine made in almost entirety using 3D printing by Fraunhofer. And the materials in this case are made out of or from steels, for titaniums or nickel alloys and cobalt chrome materials. And remarkably, entire system has been developed and tested based on the 3D printing. It's important to understand that qualification and testing and proving out of 3D printed parts is extremely important, since many of you are familiar with the NBA and NAC accreditations in case of aeronautical, in case of academic context. Similarly, in this case, there are a lot of standards, lot of accreditation, quality assessment, which happen as per AS 9100, Lloyd certification, NADCAP systems, and we need to spend time in understanding the implications connected with the usage of 3D printing for aeronautical systems, space research systems, and make sure that right from the status of powder usage, the quality practices are adhered to, and then only the 3D printed part will be able to sustain the rigor of the operation requirements. Now, I will talk about 3 definitive projects which we carried out in Wipro 3D. One for HAL, other one for IIT Bombay and IIT Vellore. Third one is from a DRDO lab. I will go through these things in enough detail so that you can get an basic peek into the kind of work which is involved in making these projects or in completing these projects. What you see in this slide is the Chetak helicopter of HAL, and it's been operational for more than 20 years. It has got life of maybe 10 more years. So in this case, there is a component called inner ring, which you can see on the right bottom. So the HAL gave us an access to only this part, saying that we want Wipro 3D to develop similar parts. All that we got an access was to the part itself. So we had to identify the material, we have to characterize the material, we captured the geometry using 3D scanning, We developed the CAD data. Then we adapted a new material called A286 material, which has got necessary strength at room temperature, also at high temperature like 650 degrees centigrade. It has got excellent uh, stress rupture properties and necessary ductility. And after all the trials that have been captured, we were able to push this part for certification. If you see the amount of time which is spent on powder bed fusion manufacturing, that is 3D printing, is just about 1/10. The remaining time was spent on powder characterization, material characterization with reference to grain sizes, residual stresses, tensile performance, fatigue performance, stress rupture, optimizing the heat treatment cycles, and evaluating the properties like flowability, density, the incidences of ONH, that is oxygen, nitrogen, hydrogen, powder morphology, and then we were able to push the part into the service. So what is the process we used in this case is the laser powder bed fusion. I'm sure Dr. Yogesh, was this technology already introduced in the day one? Hello? Hello? So the technology in this case is called powder bed fusion, and you deal with metallic powders. Maybe the particles lie in the range of 15 micron to 60 micron. To spread the powder on the build platform, and after spreading the powder on the build platform, a laser beam gets into the action and scans the geometry as per the CAD data, and the part is made layer by layer. So you need to control several parameters like hatch spacing, layer thickness, scan velocity, laser power, and you get a part of necessary geometry and dimension at speed. So what you saw in this case was the beam drew the profile of the fir tree, and then afterwards it subjected the internal volumes to hatching. So the part in this case is a turbine disc with a fir tree root. And if you were to use conventional manufacturing, you might have spent a lot of time in developing the tools, in developing the fixtures, and uh, the minimum expected time for realizing a component of this kind in the conventional scenario could be anywhere between 6 to 8 months. But the part of similar complexity now can be made using powder bed fusion in less than a week's time. because of the fact that it's completely independent of the tooling requirements and fixture requirement. If you see here, in this case, uh, what you see on the top left is the optical metallurgical image. You can see clear demarcation of the melt pools. The build direction in this case is Z direction. You can see the hatch lines. Okay, you can see the layer thickness. You can see the columnar grains, which are extending beyond even one layer thickness. And the melt pool dynamics depends on several parameters, including the effect of inertial forces, surface tension gradients, and capillary forces. Typically, what we do is we build lots of calibration coupons, like what you're seeing the right bottom, and evaluate these coupons with reference to their microstructure, with reference to their strength, sometimes with reference to even the incidences of recoater interactions, support configuration. Having gained the necessary confidence, then we move on to the part. It's very interesting to note that this technology had initial roots in a university. The patent of this foundational technology called selective laser sintering was given to Carl Deckard in the year 1987. And this particular system which he developed, which he called as selective laser fusion, selective laser sintering, uh, was part of his undergraduate project work when he was a student at the University of Texas, Austin. So he got enamored with this technology. He continued with his master's and PhD, and subsequently, this technology was transferred of time. So all this work, which happened in a university context, led to the emergence of the new industry connected with powder bed fusion. So, so I was telling you about the complex scenario connected with the powder bed fusion. What happens in case of a powder bed fusion is you've got metal particles, you have high energy laser beam. Let's imagine that the energy can be anywhere between 200 watts to 1000 watts. It's moving at a speed of 100 mm, 1000 mm per second, right up to 5000 mm per second. And when the laser beam gets in contact with these metallic powders, there is instantaneous melting, and the intense heat which is generated here is circulated down to the substrate. So there is a continuous heat transfer, and you can also see the spatter which is getting generated. You can see here spatter on the top left also, and some of the entrained powder is also getting ejected. And as the laser beam is moving ahead, in the wake, the melted powder is getting solidified. So if you look at the scenario here, it's a very complex scenario. You have got incidences of convection, you have radiation, you have also got conduction. It's a very complex heat transfer scenario. And you can see the Gaussian distribution of the laser beam energy within the beam diameter that can be anywhere between 40 microns to 70 microns. So the contrary to what we expect, the most dominant portion of this heat transfer is convection, and the within convection, it's actually the convection due to Marangoni effect, that is associated with the gradients in surface tension, and that causes the melt pool dynamics to undergo significant changes. There is a rapid movement of the melt pool. There is a continuous ejection of the precursor particles, and all these particles which are continuously ejected, or the spatter which is getting generated, is taken away from the zone of your interest by a continuous supply of inert gas. And if you don't control all the parameters which need to be controlled in the 3D printing process, it could lead to part level defects like delamination, or it could lead to subsurface defects like a crack, or it may also have some impact at the atomistic level. So I just illustrated here with the help of a correlation between laser scan speed and laser power. What happens when the conditions are not optimal? If you use very high speed of the laser beam and low energy, low power, then many of the particles, they do not get the necessary energy to melt, and you can see the lack of fusion. It means you will get a part with tens of thousands of particles which are not melted. So this will give rise to porosity, and we are not happy with the scenario. You look at the other end of the spectrum, wherein you put a lot of energy and low scan speed. Then what's happening is you are dumping too much of energy into the system at a very low laser speed. So the particles are getting much more energy than what is required, and hence they may get sublimed. So the conduction mode will go into a mode called keyhole conduction, and many metallic particles get vaporized, leaving behind the porosity. Uh, it's very similar to taking a block of ice and subject it to tremendous amount of energy. Then the block of ice may not even liquefy into water. It may straight away get solid vaporized. So same thing can happen in case of metallic particles that are getting too much of energy due to very high laser power. So fundamentally, what we need to do is we need to optimize these parameters in such a way that you can work in a process window wherein you're only supplying the optimal levels of energy for melting. Please understand that there is a repeated cycles of melting and solidification, and some of the previously solidified layers may be getting even reheated because the energy flow is happening from the top to the previously solidified layers. So it's extremely important to control the energy density. It is called volumetric energy density, expressed in terms of joules per mm cube. For example, if you are processing a material like Inconel 718, the volumetric energy density could lie anywhere between 40 to 60 joules per mm cube. And beyond this range, you may get instances like lack of fusion or keyhole. And if you use too high a speed and too high an energy, you may also encounter a scenario called balling, which is shown on the right top. That is, individually you can see the parts are melted and solidified, but they are not getting connected with each other, so they remain as separate balls. So this phenomena is called balling. So there is a tremendous scope for research and development. In this case, people are using synchrotrons, wherein the electron beams are accelerated to the speed of light, and because of the emergence of high intensity beams, the subsurface phenomena can be studied. And if you refer to some of the recent publications in Nature, you can see how research groups in various centers have been able to use synchrotron to find out the impact of using higher energy in controlling the porosity, subsurface porosity of laser powder bed fusion process. So the factors which are affecting the quality of a powder bed fusion kind of a context could be numerous. They may be connected with powder. For example, what is the absorptivity of the powder? What is the specific heat capacity? What is the bulk density? What is the flowability? What is the distribution of the particle size? All these things need to be evaluated at the stage of metal powder. During production, you may be interested in the part orientation, positioning, the support generation, the layer thickness, etc. In the post-processing, you may be deploying the surface finishing processes, heat treatment processes, solutionizing processes, and eventually you are interested in inspecting the strength, porosity, microscopy corresponding to the microstructure, density, fatigue strength, and sometime you may be even looking at in situ inspection. So these things are extremely important for controlling the quality of the part. So when you control the quality of the build process, then you get properties which are comparable to conventional scenario. So this work, whatever I'm presenting in this slide, has been the result of our 7 years of effort in selective laser melting of many materials. I'll pick up an example corresponding to titanium. If you see, the strength which is connected with 3D printing of titanium alloy is about 1230 megapascal, whereas what you get in case of a cast I64 is about 930 megapascal. So yield is about 1060 megapascal, and elongation is about 8 to 12%. So if you really see the properties which you have been able to get using selective laser melting or laser powder bed fusion are almost comparable to the properties which you get in case of casting of Ti64 alloy. But it requires, for you to come to this kind of a stage, it requires tremendous control on the process window and the process parameters. So we at Wipro, we do not only talk about build technology, actually we do research of materials, we do engineering design in such a way that we can take advantage of additive engineering. We focus on post-processing, and most importantly, once the parts are made, it's essential for demonstrating the utility of the part for end-use context. So we also focus a lot on testing and validation and certification so that we can prove out all these aspects before the 3D printed part is put into in service condition. So we are working with a lot of academic institutions in this regard. We worked with IIT Bombay in 2018 for development of an upright knuckle. We also worked very closely with VIT Vellore for re-engineering of the brake caliper. Many projects for JNTU, Jawaharlal Nehru Technical University, Hyderabad, IIITDM Kanchipuram, which is it's a central government owned MHRD institute. We are collaborating with them in identifying the residual stresses in thin cross-section titanium 64 parts of aerogas turbine engines. And one of the biggest projects that we have carried out in collaboration with academic institution is what we accomplished in partnership with IISc for developing an electron beam additive manufacturing system. Happens to be the first system in the country of this kind. It's powered by a 10 kilowatt electron gun. The system is operational in Bangalore. Those of you who are really interested in working with highly reactive materials like molybdenum, etc., can look at using the electron beam additive manufacturing. This is a completely indigenously developed one for realization of the part. In the next about 7 to 8 slides, I will recap what we have done for IIT Bombay and VIT Vellore. See, in this case, the component which is under focus is a component of the vehicle dynamics. I think some of you might have recognized the part. It is called steering knuckle. It's a key component of the vehicle dynamics. It connects all the suspension components between the wheel and chassis. And if you look at, you can see this upright being connected to the control arms. And it has to withstand all the forces to which the suspension system is subjected to. These forces could be disparate, including the steering forces, braking forces, and the reaction forces from the torque due to interaction between the road, wheel, and transmission to chassis, versa. So when you are designing and developing this part, most important thing is you need to minimize the weight, because if you can reduce the weight of this particular component, it has got tremendous utility in terms of improving the shock absorption characteristics. It enhances the cornering efficiency, and most importantly, when you improve the handling and cornering efficiency, it can reduce the lap times. So the effort in this case was about reducing the weight, improving the stiffness, and ensuring adequate strength. The conventional part was made out of 7075 material, and you can see definitely it has got necessary factor of safety, but it is a bulky part, and the dimensions of the part are indicated here. The original part was milled out of aluminum block. This shows the exploded view of the same part. And what we did was deploy the principles of topology optimization, wherein we categorize the entire volume into design space and non-design space. In case of design space, we can do necessary iterations in terms of reducing the weight while meeting the pre-stipulated criteria. And based on this topology optimization, the part has taken a new shape that is displayed on the right side. Having arrived at this topology optimized configuration, we subjected to the analysis for understanding its deflection criteria and stress response. And we wanted to evaluate how exactly this particular part can be oriented on the build platform of a laser powder bed fusion system. Same part in the orientation 1 that you see in the left extreme has got very less number of supports. But if it is put in the orientation 2, the supports are significant. In the orientation 3, the supports are much more pronounced, and overall build height is also significantly increased by almost like 300%. So what kind of a support structure would you be interested in such a way as to reduce the thermal gradients, at the same time optimize the build effort, is what is interesting in this case. So in this case, we have also done simulation in terms of understanding the residual stresses that are prevalent if the part were to be built in the orientation 1. So what do we do in this case is we apply the principles of inherent strain that account for the strains because of the mechanical loading, thermal gradients, last but not the least, phase transformation. And we build the parts which are shown with the cantilever configuration. After building the part, they are physically supported from the build platform through slicing, and we pick up the deflections corresponding to various cross sections. And once you give this data as the input to the model, you pick up the stresses and the likely deviations. So this slide shows the superposed deviation of the part after build condition vis-a-vis the CAD definition, and this slide shows the similar information after the removal of the support. So if you are convinced that post support removal, the deviation in the part is not significant or within the permissible level, then you can safely deploy those process parameters for part building with the confidence that the resultant part will be able to meet the mechanical needs, build needs, as well as the support mitigation, which is generally expected for reducing the quantum of effort in the post process. So this small video clipping shows the steering activities on. So what you see on the left in the foreground is the topology optimized one, and because of this, the weight of this particular component was reduced by 30%, and the stiffness was increased, and more importantly, the cornering efficiency was also substantially improved, which was eventually proven by using this additive manufactured part in Formula Student car trials. So it's very important for preparing the students of the current generation, especially from the mechanical engineering context, on how exactly you can redesign the parts to take advantage of the new technologies like pod bed fusion, electron beam melting, directed energy deposition, when they are being used in tandem with the topology optimization. And what is extremely important in this case is the possibility of integrating multiple functions into the part. So at Wipro 3D, we have conducted many workshops, 2-day, 3-day workshops for student teams from various universities, because we feel that several times the 3D printing knowledge is just limited to plastic 3D printing with a tabletop FDM 3D printer. But what is in real world is with the metallic materials, what is being experienced in the real world is connecting this technology with extremely challenging environments with high load bearing situations similar to what I have what I'm going to show now. This is a recent case study of a French automotive company called Bugatti. The part which is shown in this case is a monoblock 8-piston titanium alloy brake caliper with almost like 41 centimeters of the length. The original length of this part was about 29 kgs when it was made out of aluminum, but the weight was reduced by 40% due to the usage of pod bed fusion manufacturing of titanium 64. The entire part was just made in less than 45 hours of time, including 11 hours of post-processing for machining the piston contact surfaces. So the parts after being manufactured, you can see here, they are tested. So you saw in that small brief video clipping how this additive manufacturing part was used up to in a test rig, simulating the temperatures up to 1000 degrees centigrade and speeds up to 300 kilometers per hour. And the part was able to sustain the mechanical loads and thermal loads which are connected with the braking. So I would like to conclude my presentation by saying that we are seeing more and more contexts of industrialization of metal additive manufacturing. In this case, as is clearly seen, more than 380 parts of qualified headlight heat sinks have been made in a single build, optimizing the build time from 440 hours to 34 hours. And the parts which have come out from this process have been directly used in automotive context for as heat sinks of headlamps. So, Dr. Yogesh, are you there?
Yes, sir.
So can I conclude my presentation in next about 5 minutes and then keep the platform open for questions? Is it okay?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, because I want to give some time for questions, question and answers.
That will be good.
Yeah. So this is one more example connected with an actuator for retracting the landing gear. You might have seen when the aircraft lands, the landing gears are retracted into the aircraft structure. The conventional testing components, it's made out of hydraulic block manifolds. It has got about 17 components. The fluid passages in this case are drilled at angles of 90 degrees because of the limitations of the conventional manufacturing. If you were to employ additive manufacturing, this part can take a different shape. Actually, manufacturing of the part is only one part of the story. The remaining thing, as I told you, is about testing it for proof pressure, hold pressure, leakages, and cycle rates. So in this case, you can see how the internal hydraulic passage was re-engineered with a tear shape image, but it was found that the central support walls are required, and the hoop stresses are no longer uniform. So subsequently, it was converted into a diamond shape with rounded corners so that you don't get many supports. The advantage of additive manufacturing is that you can permit movement from one plane to other plane, even with the possibility of infusing twist. This is not possible in case of additive manufacturing. And you can see here the internal passages are square in cross section, but whereas externally they have got round shape to accommodate or to mate with flow control valves and mill standard fittings. And this has been subjected to simulation and finally tested and verified. So this shows the clipping of directed energy deposition. You can see my photograph on the left and with a part that has been made for directed energy deposition out of steel for marine application. The advantage of this particular system is plethora of choices are available as far as the feed material are concerned. In this case, the delivery head remains stationary. The powder is being supplied. It is being supplied in a coaxial manner compared to the laser beam, and the platform on which the powder is being built is being actuated, and hence we are able to get extremely complex shapes with a system that has got open architecture. So we are going to see more and more applications of the system for repair and refurbishment. And just want to conclude by saying that many of you are familiar with fused deposition modeling. Typically, it's a very simple tabletop 3D printer which can handle the plastic materials. But if you look at what's happening in industry is completely different in terms of developing the parts with the necessary strength for end use. So in the recent times, FDM is also getting adapted for metal printing. This is called uh, fused filament fabrication with metallic filaments. What happens in this case is you pick up the filaments which have got substantial portion of metallic powders. In this case, stainless steel. It's 80 to 90% of these filaments have got metallic powders. Remaining is a polymer. We have done this work recently in Wipro 3D. So when you extrude this material at high temperature, you get a green part, which is a result of fused deposition modeling. Then you get rid of the polymer by heating it, maybe at elevated temperatures. So you get a brown part, and after that you sinter the part, then you get a metallic part, as is shown on the right side. So in this case, what is important is the nozzle temperature is almost like 250 degrees centigrade, and the powder bed temperature on which the part is getting built is more than 100 degrees centigrade. Most of the PLA 3D printers and ABS 3D printers you are handling in your system cannot go beyond 160, 170 degrees centigrade during extrusion. That's why you cannot directly use the conventional FDM systems for printing of metallic filaments. If you compare the properties of FDM metallic filaments, you can see the yield strength is quite significant, ultimate tensile strength is significant, and in case of SLM, indeed you see abundant subgrain boundaries, whereas in case of FDM, you can see equiax structure. It's important to understand that these metallic parts which are coming out of FDM are able to exhibit necessary tensile strength in the XY direction. Despite the anisotropy, even in the Z direction, they have got reasonably good properties up to 520 megapascal. The impact performance is fine. The elongation is close to 36% even in the worst case scenario, and the hardness is good, and hence the FDM 3D printed metal parts can also meet the tooling, jig, and fixture requirements. So I just want to conclude by saying that there is tremendous amount of research scope for academic institutions in 3D printing with reference to understanding the correlations between process, microstructure, property, and performance. So you can use simulation techniques, you can do a lot of experimentation, you can do a lot of research corresponding to materials, a lot of research corresponding to the processes, and eventually the emphasis is on realizing the part that meets the functional requirements. So if some of you are interested in doing the research, you are most welcome to get in touch with me, and whatever is possible at Wipro 3D in terms of collaborating with your institutions and either developing the research proposals which have got a high TRL level. Actually, currently there is one DST call which is open for advanced manufacturing, but they want solutions at high TRL level. So you can collaborate with us for research or for competency building of your students and the faculty members in the industrial applications of additive manufacturing. With this, I would like to close my presentation. Thank you, Dr. Yogesh, for coordinating this event. And the session is open now for any questions and answers for a few minutes.
Thank you, sir. Participants, you can ask questions if you are having any query. You can unmute yourself and ask questions.
Hello, sir. Hello, sir. Good morning.
Good morning.
Sir, myself Krishna Prasad from Andhra Pradesh.
Yes, please.
Sir, I'm having a doubt.
Krishna Prasad, which institution you are from?
I'm from ITM group of institutions.
Okay, please go ahead.
Sir, as you said, metal 3D printing is perfect for the industry. Okay. So what will be its weldability characteristics, sir?
Yeah, all these materials are highly weldable. That's why they don't develop cracks when you do laser melting. There are certain materials which are extremely prone to development of cracks when you subject it to welding. And when you are handling those materials, you have to spend a lot of time in developing the process window. That's what I explained to you. Controlling the laser power, scan speed, etc. in such a way that they don't develop cracks.
Okay, sir. Sir, is there any change in the microstructure if we weld that 3D part? I mean 3D printed part?
There is a significant change. They develop columnar grains and they develop dendritic structures. We do heat treatment. So the world of laser powder bed fusion, it has got similarities corresponding to welding on one side. On other side, it also behaves like casting. So the structure is very, very unique. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hello.
Yes, please.
Hello, sir. I'm Dr. Vijay Varkam from DIIT Pune.
Okay.
Just wanted to ask about the aluminum powders.
Yes,
The aluminum, like most of the aluminum, like AL6061, 7075, they are available, but they are not, the weldability in this case is not good. What are the alternatives that are coming in this case?
Yeah, that's why I showed one slide with the aluminum alloys. I think you might have seen, I put a slide corresponding to aluminum alloys. If you want, I can show that. Yeah, these are the materials which are available with aluminum alloys. ALSI 10mg, A205, 606 to some extent, 4047 to some extent, F357, Scalm alloy. These are the aluminum alloys which are currently available. And the new materials also can be developed, but there should be a need. See, the powder manufacturers do not develop all the powders and keep them ready. When there is a need, they develop the materials, and developing the process parameter is also very important.
Okay. Okay, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir, good morning.
Good morning.
Sir, this is Dr. Benal, Government Engineering College, Kushal Nagar.
How are you, Dr. Benal? Long time since I heard your voice. Yes, Dr. Benal. How are you?
I attended your lecture. It was very nice. I got complete huge information from your end.
Yeah. Thank you.
And once the small question I have, sir.
Yes, Professor Benal, please go ahead.
Sir, how to control the defects in the thin sections using the 3D printing, sir?
That's what I told you. Currently, we are doing research with the IIITDM Kanchipuram on the same thing. Controlling the defects and controlling the porosity and maintaining the integrity in case of thin wall cross-section parts is a really big challenge. We need to do a lot of experimentation, we need to do a lot of simulation, and we need to do a lot of validation. I mean, the answer to your question is yes, it's a very complex problem, but we can develop solutions. We are currently developing thin cross-sections of 2.5 mm out of Ti64 material for gas turbine applications using powder bed fusion.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sir, it was a nice presentation, and really, I want to be in touch with you regarding this subject.
Yeah. Professor Benal, please note down this mail and you send me a mail. I don't have your current mail. Kindly send this mail and we will stay connected.
Please, sir.
Yeah, it is displayed on the screen. u.chandrasekhar@wipro.com.
Sure, sir. Sure, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, good morning, sir. Good morning, sir. I'm Dr. Dharmalingam from Weltech University, sir.
Yes.
Sir, how are you, sir?
I'm doing fine, Dharmalingam. How are you?
Sir. Yes, sir. After a long time, I'm seeing you, sir. A very nice presentation, and I got a lot of information. When you worked here, also I got very lot of information I got from you only, sir. And now also you have given a lot of advanced techniques also, and you have presented very well, and more information I got it based on the material selection for additive manufacturing.
Please
Please
convert them into useful MTech projects, PhD projects, Dr. Dharmalingam, and you continue to do, and it's a very exciting area for research as well as development.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Sir, I have some doubt, sir. Actually, in that metal part, when we are printing the metal parts, sir, using additive manufacturing, and so how to tolerate that ductility, sir, because the sintering, that means the cooling rate of heating and the rate of cooling, that it makes the somewhat brittle nature of the material, and the ductility, it is not coming up to the mark, sir.
Yeah, I actually presented that aspect also. So there are two things in this case you need to understand. One is you mentioned the heat transfer rates are completely different. I accept with you. The heat transfer rates are 10 to the power of 5 Kelvin per second. Do you see the slide?
Yes, sir. I'm looking here, sir.
You can see the ductility, how much we got. So we are able to control the process parameters and get the necessary ductility. All this data which is presented is from our own experimentation in Wipro 3D. So you can see the ductility we got, and we have got necessary fatigue strength, we have got necessary yield performance as well as hardness.
Okay,
It's
sir.
possible. Yeah. So bring
Okay,
your
okay.
students once to our institution. Dr. Bala and other people have been in touch with me. Bring your
Okay.
students sometime and see what is happening and learn and try and replicate.
Okay, okay, sir.
Okay.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Dharma.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. I'm hearing from your lectures. Very nice, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Good morning, sir. This is Dr. Balakrishnan from M. Kumarasamy College of Engineering, Karur.
Okay.
Thanks for your very well informed presentation.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I have a question, sir. So, in your presentation, you have mentioned about the growth of columnar grains beyond 1 layer thickness.
Correct. Correct.
How it would come, sir? Since we depositing layer by layer, how comes the crossing of the columnar grain growth between layers, one layer to other layer?
Okay, I presented actually that also. Let me see. I'll project it. Fundamentally, what I am saying is, see the hatching is in the XY direction. So there is one hatch line, there is a next hatch line, and they need to connect with each other. Then only you can get a layer. Okay. Imagine that you make a layer of about 40 micron thickness, and 5 seconds ago you made one more layer with 40 micron. So how can you get a part without delamination? Only when the energy levels are going beyond one layer. It means the previously realized layer is also getting reheated. Then only the current layer can get connected with the, if you are working on layer number n, the energy level should go to layer number n-1 also. Then only they can connect. And hence, the columnar grain structures which you see in these cases go beyond even a single layer thickness. That's what I mentioned.
Oh, that is it possible to have, if we have depositing 10 layer, for example, if a columnar grain may start from the second layer, and whether is it possible to cross all the 10 or 9 layers?
No. All that I mentioned is the columnar grain structure may exceed the current layer. That's all I mentioned. I didn't say it goes through the complete.
That may be sometime possible because of the epitaxy growth.
Now I have already put this. I have already put this slide. You can see here. You can see the grain structures. You can see the X, Y spacing. Can you see?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah. I'm not talking about a grain which is. I'm not talking about a grain which is completely cutting across the entire Z thickness. I'm only talking about a grain which is going beyond the thickness of the single layer.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. And the comparison which you made is with casting and selective laser melting process.
Yeah.
So property you have compared, no? The properties are comparable with the casting.
Better, actually, superior to cast properties.
Yeah, it is comparable. That is what you justify.
Actually, when it comes to casting, it is superior. Yeah.
Yes, superior. But what about the comparison between the wrought products, wrought alloys?
Yeah, I think if you look at the wrought products, one place where even the cast products are inferior is with reference to the ductility. The ductility of the wrought products will always be better. So whenever you are trying to replace a wrought product with a additive manufactured part, the first thing you will focus is on the ductility.
Yes.
So in case of the helicopter engine related parts, which I have shown to you, I have explained that concept. So we worked a lot on improving the ductility and fatigue and stress rupture properties. You need to do a lot of testing.
Yeah. So I understood that. Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. If time permits, we will meet. Thank you so much for your nice presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Dr. Yogesh.
Yes.
I think we can take one more person and then close the session. Yeah.
Yes. One last question. any participants who is left?
Hello.
Yes, please.
Hello.
Yeah.
Sir, I want to ask one question.
Yes. Mr. Gupta.
Yes. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
My question is that for steel, which type of 3D printing technique we will be able to use if we want to prepare a rapid prototyping model of 3D printing of stainless steel, suppose, which technique we should use?
Which steel? Is it SS316 or 174?
SS316, please, SS316 if we take, so which technique we should use?
We can use powder bed fusion. We have done multiple parts using powder bed fusion, laser powder bed fusion.
It is solid ground curing.
Solid ground curing, the technology is dead now. You will not get even a single system because of the fact that it was very maintenance heavy. Nobody uses solid ground curing. The company itself closed down in 2003. 17 years before it closed.
Use deposition modeling, FDM.
I already presented. If you use FDM, you get about 90% density, whereas if you use powder bed fusion, you get 99.89% density.
Oh, yes. So one thing more. Hello, please, I will be thankful if you please give this answer too. Hello.
Yes, please.
Sir, what is the cost of this machine?
What is the
cost price
of what?
Price of this last machine which you have told in place of deposition modeling. You have told one more machine. What is the current price of that machine?
It depends on the build envelope, accuracy which you are interested. It also depends on the number of filaments you would like to use, extrusion temperature. It starts from 25,000 rupees, right? It goes right up to 1 crore. Depends on so many other specifications. It's like asking what is the cost of a computer. Depends on so many parameters.
Okay, sir. Lot of thanks, sir, for the answer.
Thank you.
Presentation, sir.
Thank you. Dr. Yogesh.
Thank you, Chandrasekhar sir. So,
yeah, what is Dr. Yogesh? I was curious to know, are you also working in additive manufacturing?
That I wanted to tell. Actually, I have joined 10 months back in NIT Patna. And here, this year, because this college is old and it is supposed to be shifted to a new location. So, there we are supposed to develop a additive manufacturing lab. Maybe by next year or maybe next 1 or 2 years we have to develop. So that way we will be new in additive manufacturing. Here till now only one small printer is there, but we will be developing a new lab at that new location. It is 40 kilometers from current location. So then the chances of development will be more, I hope. And as I am also starting my career, so it will be great to collaborate if we can collaborate in some sense.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Yogesh.
Thank you.
So
thank
we
you,
can
Dr.
conclude the presentation now. And
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Okay, participants. Next session will start at 12.